All right, welcome to this episode of Market Shares. I'm your host, Tony Blodgett, and today I got a special guest with me, Erik Noet. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you came on. Erik is a friend of mine, and we've worked together for many years, on and off a little bit, right, as we've navigated through the mortgage world. And then he got away from me for a while, and I tried for years to bring him back to our team, and I finally had a chance to do that. But Erik heads up both our regional training and helps with onboarding, but also you support training nationally as well, right?
Yeah, part of the OLA sales support team. So whenever any loan officers, originators, LOAs run into any issues when they're out there originating, they can reach out to our help desk and we jump in and help them out wherever they need it.
Well, it must be pretty boring because, I mean, we never run into any problems.
What can I say?
In the mortgage business.
Yeah. I wish.
Well, right on. Well, that's a pretty unique role, you know, but let's, you've done a lot of different things in the mortgage space. So how would you feel about just giving a little background on, kind of what brought you to here, and then we'll talk a little bit more about your current role and kind of what your passions are in the mortgage space. So how'd you get into this crazy business?
That sounds great. Yeah, no. So I started out, I was going to school to become a teacher. I was attending classes.
Like a school teacher?
A school teacher,
okay.
Yeah. So that kind of segued nicely, but I was just working at the YMCA while I was taking classes and playing basketball in the mornings with a group, one guy that just turned out to be the owner of a small mortgage shop here in Everett. Oh. And so I was discovered on the basketball courts of Everett.
Perfect.
And from there, he said, asked me about what I was doing, and my first child was on the way. And he said, well, it sounds like you need to make some money. I was like, well, yeah, a little more than what a college student gets paid. And working at the Y wasn't exactly a windfall. So he hired me as a processor. I worked as a processor for not very long, only about 3 months or so before I just started kind of working my way up through the company, started doing loans. There were a few folks there that believed in me and started sending out mailers on my behalf. So I started taking calls and turning loans. And then after that, I became operations manager of that small brokerage shop. Did that for about 4 years before I met you at Mortgage Advisory Group.
Okay, yeah. So you did originate for a while. You still originate a little bit today, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. Well, that's you got to keep your finger in it, right? A little bit.
If I didn't have the practice, I don't know what I would be doing. I'd be out there, trying to explain to people how to do something I don't even know how to do. So yeah, I gotta be a good fisherman myself to teach how to fish.
Yeah. Well, that's true. So you did branch support for quite a while for us at the previous company, and now this role with onboarding. So I think what's unique about your situation is you get to see people during one of the most difficult times of their career, which is when they're changing companies. So maybe let's talk about that a little bit. What do you see? What are some of the challenges that loan officers have when they're making a transition? What are things that you've seen people do that have helped them, have a smoother transition, and you've done this not just for New American Funding, but you've done this for other companies as well. So any tips or tricks around how do you make a successful move in the mortgage industry?
Absolutely. Well, first off, I am blessed in my role because I do get to meet everybody as they're coming on board, and I do see them, like you said, their hair is on fire. They've got loans that they want to get into the system. And kind of my place, with 5 kids, I have 5 boys. So being the calm, the eye of the storm, kind of letting all the other stuff go on around me, or being the duck, paddling like crazy below the water. So it's always about having a good attitude. Number one, they're going to come in, they're going to be stressed. And so don't let that stress, carry over onto our side and us start running around with our hair on fire because we know what we're doing.
Right.
So it's just a matter of having that confidence to get them in. We have a good team that we can take some of their loans and help people work on them so that they're not stressed about getting their loans input while they're trying to learn new systems. They know how to be successful. They know how to originate. They just don't always know how to use our systems. And so that's our key for that first week, is letting them really focus on learning those systems, getting that foundation so that when they are ready to start originating, they're not kind of missing pieces of that foundation where it makes it difficult to originate. So it's really just taking that time to focus on the new systems, let the origination just lie for a minute, relax. It's not going to leave you.
It's really hard for loan officers to do.
It's really hard. I know it is.
But it's really great advice. I mean, I think if you're changing companies in any fashion, I think taking the time to really slow down learn the systems, because if you skip that piece, you're going to be struggling for months potentially, as you're trying to work through loans, because you just don't know the basic fundamentals of how a particular company might work. And so I think that as an organization, we have to do as much as possible to give them the confidence that their loans are going to be taken care of. Let the system do its thing, and you need to slow down and attend all your classes and do all your trainings and ask questions if you don't understand. And
to that point, yeah, ask questions. I get a lot of people that are like, sorry for bothering you, sorry for reaching out. I'm like, no, I'm here. They pay me to do this.
Yeah.
So don't stop reaching out. Like, I am your right-hand man. I'm your buddy. Like, I want to be your best friend for that first month. And so I think that's the other thing, too, that I would encourage people to use is use those resources. Don't think that those resources are just out there for certain people and they're limited. Like, that's one of the really cool things about this company, about New American Funding, is that we put those resources and that capacity in place to be able to take on whatever it is that we're trying to bring on.
Yeah, well, I know people, we're so self-sufficient as loan officers, right? We're all control freaks. We all want to do it all ourselves. And so it is kind of difficult to ask for help, but you need to, because that's what the support's there for. So, you have a unique role in that, you meet a lot of people as they come in the front door, and your customer's always kind of changing, right? I mean, you're dealing with a different set of people, and obviously you help people long term, but really you're kind of there during that time when they first transition for the most part. Is that right?
Yeah, I want to be more than just that, work guy. I mean, NAF does have a family culture, and to me, they really are a real friend. So I want them to lean on me like a friend and not feel like, oh, I don't want to ask a question I've already asked or anything. So I try to get that rapport with them right away. And so, yeah, we usually have long-term friendships after that first month.
Yeah. What are some of the things that people, struggle with the most? What are the things that they're reaching out to you? Do you find most often where maybe they glanced over some things during the onboarding and they're like, okay, I need help? Where do people seem like they struggle the most, do you think?
I think the big things are just, changes. You've spent 5 years working with Encompass a certain way, and so you think Encompass. But as we know, Encompass is customizable at every company to a different degree.
Right.
And here at NAF, we've really taken it and customized it in such a fashion that if you don't know our system, you're going to struggle when you first get into it.
Right.
So just really taking that time, again, here we go back to that, to learn that system and just those little nuances. And luckily, I've worked in Encompass in multiple different companies and seen the different ways that it functions and the ways that they might be thinking it should function. And so that helps me bridge that gap.
That makes a really good point. Yeah, I mean, for those, Encompass is our loan origination software, and I think over half of the mortgage industry uses it. But you're right. I mean, out of the box, it's very vanilla, and different companies customize it in different ways. That's a really good point. I could see where people will tend to be like, oh yeah, I don't need to watch that training. I know how to use Encompass, and yeah, that's a really good point.
Very common.
What else? What other things do people seem to get tripped up on, do you think, that during a move in general?
It's kind of losing sight of the big picture. Sometimes you just start getting myopic in each little piece of the loan, and you forget to kind of look at the whole process. And then you realize after 2 weeks of training, you're like, okay, I've worked on this piece of this loan and this piece of this loan, but to put the whole picture together is a little bit of a struggle. And so that's another place where really my role is huge, and I love taking that time to kind of help them understand those little wrinkles about the big picture as they're kind of realizing, okay, now I've got this piece of the painting, this piece of the painting. I want to look at it as a whole, so I can help them kind of make sure they're interpreting it correctly.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. All right, so you're probably busy, and you probably have the kind of schedule, a little bit like mine, I bet, where people just hit you up at all times of day and hour, and probably on the weekends and all sorts of crazy stuff. So how do you fit this in with your life? You got 5 kids, you said. Let's talk a little bit about your work-life balance and how do you make that work for you?
Yeah, I do. I have the 5 boys, so and I'm a coach for baseball.
What are the ages of the kids? Let me get a lay of the land here.
We got a range from 6 to 17.
Okay.
Yeah, so we got high school to first grade. It's a senior in high school all the way down to first grade. So
you're crazy, man.
And then also on the Little League board, so I'm vice president of baseball for Mukilteo Little League. I do a lot of umpiring and coaching as well. So yeah, my personal life is pretty packed, and that's why I've kind of always stayed away from originating, because if I have a borrower that's worried and can't get a hold of me, I can't really comfort them. With LOs, I can set that expectation a little bit better. They're totally understanding. I said, hey, if I can take your call on a weekend, I absolutely will. And there's usually never an issue. Usually if they send me a text or something, say, call me when you're available, no problem. And yeah, it is all hours. It's on weekends at times, which to me working isn't that difficult.
Right.
If my job was, taking tons of brain power and it was hard and I had to go sit in front of my computer every time, it might be a little different story. But most of these questions I can answer over the phone and help somebody through where.
Right. You're the expert at it. They're the ones who are stuck. You're just kind of helping them get unstuck.
Exactly.
Sometimes you help me get unstuck too. I tend to reach out to Eric. When in doubt, I just call Eric.
I'm not IT though. Just a disclaimer. I am not IT. I try, but usually my focus there is just be smart, restart, and then it works.
Yeah, just reboot, right?
Reboot.
Just reboot. When in doubt, just reboot.
Yes, exactly.
That applies to a lot of things.
That's my
in
IT
life
knowledge
I've
there.
learned.
Yes, it's true.
Right on. All right. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you find in this role? Sounds like most of it is kind of old hat for you, and you're perfectly suited for this role. Not many people have the unique set of qualities, but what are the biggest challenges that you deal with this?
This is kind of an interesting one. I'm actually, you kind of know that I'm a little bit introverted.
Right.
I'm not extreme. I've never liked public speaking, for instance. And so for me, this was a challenge to be able to step up and be able to get in front of a group. But because I feel like I'm kind of an expert in this arena, it's always been something I've been really easy to overcome that heartbeat, that a little initial tinge of nervousness. As soon as I start talking about the topic that I'm an expert in, it all goes away.
Yeah.
So for me, that's been the biggest challenge, is overcoming that fear of public speaking and really finding ways to overcome it.
Well, I'm going to let you in on a little secret from a guy that does plenty of public speaking and a podcast every now and again. That little feeling never goes away, by the way. So even people who speak all the time get that little bit of nervousness, and it's a little bit of the adrenaline rush, I think, that actually helps you to, perform at your best.
I agree, yeah. And you feel alive, you're like,
You do.
hey, I'm here, I'm feeling stuff, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Okay, and it does. I drink a little bit of coffee sometimes before training, but really it's that little tinge that just kind of gets me, okay, I'm on, here we go.
Yeah, well, I think that it's good to be able to have a role where you get out of your comfort zone. You are clearly an expert at what you do, and so that definitely, I find that, a lot of people say, well, I get notes in front of me, but I wrote nothing down about this conversation, so I don't even know what these notes are for. But but people ask me, they're like, well, do you prepare for, what you're going to teach or what you're going to talk about? And it's like, well, most of the time, no, because I'm just talking about stuff that I'm passionate about or that I know about. And same with you. You're training people on things that you already know how to do very well. So it just comes natural. So what are some of the biggest, we didn't really touch on, but I think there's some things that people can do if they're going to make a move to a new company. They need to be organized, right? They need to have their database in order and, be prepared for the transition. Any tips around that stuff that you've seen that's worked well for people, and then other times where people have complete meltdowns because they lost all of their information that they've been collecting for the last 20 years? Does that ever happen?
I think you've run into this a little bit in the past. So what I would say is it does take a little bit of planning ahead of time, because once you've put in your notice at another company, sometimes the systems are locked down. So if you can do anything ahead of time, and you probably should be maintaining your database anyways outside of the company systems, right. Because that is your book of business. But outside of that, if it's possible to give yourself any sort of a origination gap there, or if you're working with a team, then maybe have some of those folks on your team transition first, so they can be worrying about the loans that are going in, with the new team while you're focusing on training. I think that's a good way to kind of have your ducks in a row so that you're not feeling so overwhelmed as you're starting. Outside of that, it really is attitude. That's really it. Just have a positive attitude, have trust and faith. If you have trust in a company enough to move your license there and be employed by them, have trust in their systems, and don't panic when you hear something that's a little bit different from maybe how you've done it in the past or how your other companies have operated. Trust that, we've vetted it right. to the degree that we know what works, and work with our system a little bit. And again, you're trusting that system, and let the results speak.
Well, I think that's the best advice ever. Look, I've never had anyone make a move and everything just goes super smooth, right? With any company.
Yes.
And so if you have the right attitude and you recognize there's going to be challenges, there's going to be things I didn't expect, there's going to be differences, but you can have a positive attitude about it. I've seen people that have horrible attitudes and they seem to have a horrible experience, and people that are, they're optimistic, they trust the system. Yeah, there's challenges, but we work through them. It makes a world of difference. I do want to talk a little bit about your database. You got to be careful because in the mortgage business, there's a lot of borrower private information that you're not allowed to keep, separate, right? So you can't maintain a database of a borrower's, income and their social security numbers and keep all that in some sort of a private database. What you can keep and what I think you should keep, and we even help people maintain databases sometimes through integrations that we have. We don't let any borrower protected data go into their database, nor should you have that in a separate database. But you should have names, phone numbers, maybe their birth dates, address, basic information about your clients because those are your clients. And you got to be really careful if you're changing companies. You can't. Not every company is going to be cool with you just downloading that information out of their secure systems. Matter of fact, most of them will know that you did it. So, you really want to make sure that there's an understanding between you and the company that you're at, that, there's information that you're going to be keeping of your own borrowers' information and maintain that. So you do have to be careful. I think that the same thing goes with emails and all sorts of other information you may want to, have access to. A lot of it, you are allowed to have access to, but a lot of it, you're not supposed to have. And if you do have, there's all sorts of encryption requirements and all that. And so definitely got to be careful. But I think that when you're making a move, you do have to plan ahead. And if you've not made a move in the mortgage business, then just know that as soon as there is a hint that you may be going to a different company, you are like cut off, right? There's no other industry, I think, that's as aggressive as the mortgage industry at just shutting you out. Like your key fob doesn't work.
Oh, it just disintegrates the second you even mention it. I might be putting in my notice and your key just disappears.
It's so strange. But it's always been like this in the mortgage business.
It really has. And I guess that's kind of a question for you is what do you think about transparency for somebody that's about to make a move? What should they or shouldn't they share with their...
That's a great question. I think it really depends on your leadership. I've had people for whatever reason who've chosen to, move on from their career, where I was their manager or whatnot. And I've had plenty of people that I've been able to have a transparent conversation with. And I just had somebody, who let me know that they were going to be taking a different job in similar industry, but kind of a totally different opportunity for them. And, we didn't lock them out of their system and we let them close out their loans, and it was all very above board and amicable. I mean, I think that this is where the relationship really matters. And if you can be of high integrity and just let your manager know that, hey, I have, even before you ever leave, right? I think proactive communication about your challenges and frustrations are usually warranted. If you're working at a company where you don't feel like you can voice your concerns, I mean, that's a pretty big red flag to begin with. But yeah, I think you got to be careful because most companies, for whatever reason, will just, cut you off. Yep. I've always been able to work through, I mean, we don't have a lot of attrition, thank God, because we try to provide a great environment to do loans, but look, people do move, and it's almost always that I've been able to, have a conversation with them, and, we work on a succession plan that works for them. I'm also not the kind of person who, like I just said, I feel like you should have your own database. I mean, these are, when you fund a loan with our company, that's our client also. I mean, it's your client and it's our client, and like in our case, we service that loan and we're responsible for that borrower. And of course, we're going to keep in communication with them because we service their loan, we're their lender. However, I also do believe that loan officers, they go out and develop these relationships with real estate agents, with insurance agents, with financial planners. They do a great job of maintaining long-term relationships with their database. These are their clients just as much as they're our clients.
I think that's the word you just used, though, relationships. The loan officer has a relationship with that borrower. The company looks at that borrower as a client, perhaps.
Right. Well, and look, I think that, as the servicer of someone's loan, we're not going to stop, soliciting them to let them know that there's business opportunity. Now, if you still work for us and we service the loan, we'll give it back to you as a loan officer. If you don't work for us anymore, we still have to take care of the client.
There you
and
go.
you can do the same as well, right? I mean, and every company is different. I mean, look, a lot of mortgage companies don't service their loans, and they sell that loan after it closes, and the only relationship with that client is the one that the loan officer has, right?
Exactly.
And the loan officers, some of them may not even know how that works. They may not know, where their loan goes after it funds. But nonetheless, I think that you do have a responsibility to maintain a database. That is your Rolodex for life. Those are your clients, and you should have a relationship with them ongoing, whether you work at the same company that you originated it or not. And if you don't do that, then in my opinion, you're not a very great loan officer, So figure that out. If you have questions about it, talk to your company, about what information you're allowed to keep separately. I'm actively coaching people on what they can do and what we're comfortable with. I'm not afraid of someone maintaining a database of their clients. I think that they should do that. If they leave our company, that means we didn't do a very good job of providing them an environment where they want to stay. So shame on us, and I always seek feedback from people if they decide to take their mortgage career, their mortgage practice, and take it somewhere else. I want to understand why. And sometimes it's nothing that we could have done differently. They have different goals and aspirations in life, and that's fine too, But yeah, so I think to answer your question, I would hope that you're working at a company where you can be open with your leadership, and even if that means ultimately deciding to take your career somewhere else, that you could work through a smooth transition. I know of companies though that they lock you out, they don't pay you. It's like it's crazy. It's like, wow, like we're not indentured servants here.
Those are the worst too. Is when they don't pay out a loan that was actually originated by that LO. So yeah, those types of things can leave a really bad taste in the mouth, and over time that catches up to a company. You get a bad rap for that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I mean, it's the reputation will get out there, and it happens to managers too. I mean, there's so many people that work for us today that worked for me at some other point in their career. You're one of them, and there's so many people though that it's a small business, and people get lured away by different opportunities. Sometimes they get lured away by big signing bonuses. I mean, there's all sorts of things that can have someone feel like they need to make a move. And how you separate with someone is almost as important as how you treated them while they worked there. Because chances are, I'm not going anywhere. I've been in this business for 26 years. I'll be in it for, 25 more. And, just because someone has chosen to do something different doesn't mean they won't come back around later. And I think you see this with our staff here. I mean, most of these people that work in this region, we all work together at some point in the past.
Yep,
so
100%.
Some people have come back and forth like 3 times. It's like, what, are you going to learn? Like, this is the place to be.
Well, the grass sure looks nice over there. I took some time on the other side of the fence, and I let you test out the waters. And I definitely saw what was happening here at New American Funding, because my last company was purchased by a larger company. And so when I saw that happening again, that was 2 companies in a row.
Yeah.
For me, it was time to go to the company doing the purchasing and acquiring other smaller companies rather than being the companies getting acquired.
Yeah, stability is important in the mortgage business. But yeah, I feel fortunate to have landed here myself 8 years ago after we sold our company. So yeah, this has been a very stable place. All right, well we're gonna wrap this, but why don't you just share with me, like, why do you love the mortgage business? What's kept you in this crazy business? Because it is cyclical, it's stressful. You have a really unique seat in it, but what is it about mortgage that keeps you coming back?
Well, it definitely is constantly evolving. For me, having that passion to teach initially, for me, it's this constant curriculum that's always being updated and always needing to be shared. So there's the challenge of the public speaking. For me, it's fun to be challenged in that type of a fashion. And then also just, I don't do a ton of loans, as you know.
Right.
But when I do actually complete a loan for a borrower, just that feeling, they're usually my friends. So being that expert in the field that they can trust and have a great experience, they always come back and say, that was amazing. Like, I would have never done the loan, if it wasn't for me knowing you already and trusting you. And so that's really how I get all my business, is just through that type of relationship and knowing all these people that are my friends that I go over to their house and see the house they bought 5 years ago that's appreciated so much at this point, and they're in really good financial situations because they trusted me as a friend and as a professional in the industry. And so that's super rewarding.
Yeah.
Everything else.
I don't think people realize the amount of wealth creation that happens by homeownership. It's like we talk about it and it almost seems cliche to us, but man, like seriously, if you don't own a home, like you should seriously consider it. Like
As soon as possible.
I don't know of another way to build wealth like home ownership and just the pride of being in a home that you love and, you know, stability for your family. Like, oh my gosh.
And it's yours. Yeah. You know, these days
You can paint it whatever color you want.
You name it. Have any animals you want? If you want
Unless you're in an HOA, then maybe you might only have 3 or 4 colors to choose from. But I digress. Well, Erik, I got to say that, you know, your role is one that, you know, you don't get to see your name in lights every month. You don't get all the same accolades that maybe loan officers get. But it's so needed and so necessary. And to have someone that I really trust with the new people that are joining on board. You always take the call when I have a concern or a question or need you to jump in or help. I think it's a little bit of a thankless job because you don't even get to develop. You know, you're cycling through new people so often, right? And then once they're kind of on their own, you know, I'm sure they reach out to you and appreciate you, but it's a little bit of a thankless job. They're on their way and they're like, okay, I don't need Erik's help anymore. Like, you know, it's kind of like when your teenager grows up and leaves the home. It's like, I don't need my parents anymore. It's like, but I gotta say that your role is so needed, and I'm really fortunate that we were able to get you back on the team because it's so critical. And right now we're kind of in growth mode. I mean, as an industry, there's a lot of instability. You talked about companies being sold. Well, there's a lot of that going on right now. There's going to be a lot of disruption in the mortgage space, and you know, we're going to continue to be a safe haven for people that want to join. And I feel very confident to have you helping to usher people in the front door and be there for them. So thanks, man, for all you do.
Thank you. I feel really blessed to met you when I did and to be part of this great company. And I really love my role. So I plan to do it for a long time with you. So let's keep plugging away.
Good. That's the right answer. Right on. Well, hey, thanks again, guys, for taking the time to watch another episode. It's an episode. Yeah. It's an episode of Market Shares. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do so. We're dropping content every Friday. I love doing interviews with different folks. Love sharing commentary about what's going on in this crazy market. So we try to mix it up here. But tell your industry friends about Market Shares. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Erik, thanks for joining me, my friend. And take care. Bye for now.
Like and subscribe. I've always wanted to say that. Did it work?
I think it worked. I think that pushed them over the edge.